Welcome to Moon Mind Temple. In this video, we gently explore a quiet, yet powerful truth, why they stopped calling, and how you can find peace in the silence they left behind. It's easy to think that when someone withdraws, the pain we feel is a sign of something broken. But could this silence actually be a gateway to emotional freedom? Zen wisdom teaches us that much of our pain does not come from others, but from our expectations, our clinging to how we believe things should be. Tonight, we'll uncover what truly causes the ache when love goes quiet and how that ache can become the beginning of a deeper peace within you. Herb 1. Craving connection, losing peace. There once was a man named Teshi who shared a deeply loving connection with a woman named May. In the beginning, their relationship was alive with warmth, long conversations, affectionate messages, shared dreams. Every text felt like a thread weaving their hearts closer. But over time, something changed. May's replies became less frequent. Calls that once lasted hours turned into brief updates, then silence. Teshi, feeling the distance growing, tried harder, texting more often, pouring his heart into longer messages. He believed that if he just communicated more clearly, surely May would respond. But the more he tried to hold on, the more he felt her slipping away. Water Wave 2. The illusion of control. At first, Teshi thought he could fix the distance. He believed that if he just said the right words, or showed how much he cared, things would return to how they once were. For a while, his efforts seemed to work. May would reply, sometimes even warmly. But her energy slowly grew colder, her presence fainter. What Teshi didn't see was that his grasping, his need for response, was creating more inner turmoil than peace. Like trying to hold water in a clenched fist, the tighter he held on, the more it slipped through. Each unanswered message began to feel like a personal rejection. Each moment of silence grew louder in his mind. The peace he was chasing began to feel farther than ever. Fire 3. The burden of expectation. Soon, Teshi's heart became heavy not just with sadness, but with resentment. I've always been there for her, he thought. Why won't she be there for me now? He began to measure love through response time. He expected May to show up the way he would have. And every unmet expectation deepened his suffering. But one night, in the stillness of meditation, a different perspective emerged. A dream came to him. A Zen master whispered, "You are not suffering because she is distant. You are suffering because you expected her to erase your loneliness." Teshi woke with a realization. He had placed the responsibility for his inner peace in May's hands. And in doing so, he had forgotten how to hold it for himself. Fallen Leaf 4. Facing the root of suffering. Teshi began to see the truth. It was not May's silence that hurt. It was his attachment to how he thought she should respond. He thought love meant constant closeness. That validation must come from outside. But the teachings of the Buddha returned to him. You only lose what you cling to. He had been clinging to a version of the past, trying to force the present to fit the shape of old memories. But love, like all things, changes. Relationships evolve or dissolve. His pain wasn't proof that something had gone wrong. It was proof that something was changing. Seedling 5. Dependence disguised as love. Over time, Teshi saw another truth. He had become emotionally dependent on May's responses. He was measuring his self-worth by her attention. Without her messages, he felt lost, unwanted, invisible. A Buddhist parable came to mind of a vine that wrapped itself so tightly around a tree that, when the tree fell, the vine had nothing to hold on to and withered. Teshi, like the vine, had entwined his identity around someone else. And when that connection faded, he felt like he had no ground to stand on. But the real problem wasn't May's silence. It was that he had forgotten how to reach for the light on his own. Person in Lotus Position 6. Returning to the inner self. One afternoon, Teshi sat beneath a cherry tree, lost in thought. The wind was gentle, the blossoms silent. And there, in that quiet moment, the truth became clear. Loving someone was never the mistake. Expecting them to sustain his happiness had been. He remembered the words. Peace comes from within. Do not seek it without. May could not carry the weight of his inner world. And she never promised to. That peace had to rise from within him, not from a phone notification or a returned call. So he began to change. He stopped waiting for replies. He stopped measuring his days by her presence. Instead, he returned to nature, to solitude, to the sound of his breath. He rediscovered the joy of his own company. Dove 7. Freedom in letting go. As Teshi released his need for control, he began to feel lighter. He no longer needed May's replies to feel whole. He no longer sought messages to confirm his worth. And then, something unexpected happened. May reached out, not with urgency, but with warmth. A soft message of appreciation for the space he had offered her. Their interaction was calm, unburdened by need. Teshi no longer viewed her words as a lifeline. Each message was simply a gift, not a requirement. In letting go, he found the connection he had always longed for, not with May, but with himself. Sunrise over Mountains 8. Impermanence and the Heart's Wisdom. In the end, Teshi's journey brought him back to one of the deepest truths of Buddhist wisdom. Everything changes. Relationships begin and end. People drift and return. Silence falls, and new songs begin. Our peace cannot depend on what stays or leaves. It must be rooted in what never abandons us: our own awareness, our own breath, our own gentle heart. Letting go didn't mean forgetting. It meant freeing himself from the illusion that love must always look the same. 9. The space between words. In the weeks that followed, Teshi noticed something unusual. He no longer rushed to check his phone in the morning. The space between conversations with May no longer felt like a punishment. It began to feel like sacred space. A quiet place to breathe. To grow. He had spent so long fearing silence, assuming it meant rejection or loss. But now he saw it differently. Silence had become a teacher. In the space between words, he discovered the sound of his own thoughts, the ones he used to drown out by chasing someone else's attention. Zen teaches us. It is not the sound, but the silence between notes that gives music its rhythm. Wind Face 10. The winds of change are not your enemy. Teshi began to walk more often, feeling the seasons shift. Where once he had clung to routine in hopes of preserving his past, he now welcomed change like wine through open windows. He had feared change, believing it would take love away. But now he saw that love changes shape. It never vanishes, it evolves. The same way trees shed leaves not to die, but to prepare for new life. Each change was no longer something to fear, but a call to presence, a reminder that nothing is promised, and yet every moment is a gift. 11. Love that frees, not binds. There was a moment, a small one, that showed Teshi how far he had come. He saw May's photo on social media. In the past, it would have sent him spiraling, wondering, comparing, aching. But this time, he smiled. Not because he no longer cared, but because he now understood that love is not proven by possession. Love, when it's real, doesn't cling. It blesses. It allows space. It sets both souls free. He thought. If I truly care for her, I must also care for her freedom, even if it leads away from me. Puzzle Piece 12. Reassembling the Self. Teshi began rebuilding the parts of himself he had abandoned in the name of love. Hobbies he had pushed aside. Friendships he had neglected. Dreams he had postponed, waiting for the right time. He realized, the right time is now. Too often we pause our own lives, hoping someone else will press play. But Zen reminds us. When the student is ready, the teacher appears. Sometimes, the teacher is solitude. Sheaf of Rice 13. The gentle art of compassion for self. Teshi reflected not only on May, but on himself. He no longer judged his past desperation or pain. He offered himself compassion. He saw now that everything he did, the overtexting, the overthinking, was born from a longing to be loved. And that was never a weakness. It was human. He whispered to his younger self, the one who sat waiting for replies that never came. You were never unworthy. You were simply learning where your worth truly lies. Crescent Moon 14. Stillness is not emptiness. There were days when the quiet felt too heavy, nights when the moonlight reminded Teshi of past laughter. But instead of escaping into distraction, he leaned into stillness. And there, he discovered something profound. Stillness was not emptiness. It was fullness, unburdened. It was spaciousness. It was presence. He began to see that what he had once feared was actually sacred. That sometimes, silence is not the absence of love, but the presence of deeper healing. Counterclockwise arrows button 15. Detachment is not indifference. Many misunderstand the Buddhist path of non-attachment. Teshi once did too. He thought it meant becoming cold, uncaring, disconnected. But he learned that detachment doesn't mean closing the heart. It means opening it wider, so wide that it no longer demands, clutches, or fears. To detach is to love with open hands. To say, whether you stay or go, I wish you peace. Cyclone 16. Healing is not linear. Some days Teshi felt strong. Other days, the ache returned. But he no longer saw this as failure. Healing, he realized, is not a straight line, it's a spiral. We revisit familiar places, but from new levels of understanding. He learned to greet emotional setbacks with kindness. To say, "Ah, an old pain, welcome. Let's sit together a while." Every wave of sadness became a wave that shaped the shore of his inner strength. Person in Lotus Position 17. Presence is the door to freedom. Teshi discovered that the present moment was no longer something he needed to escape. He stopped revisiting the past. He stopped rehearsing possible futures. He simply was bathing in the breath, in the sound of birds, in the way sunlight painted patterns on his wall. This presence was not dull. It was alive. Radiant. It held more peace than any message ever could. Prayer Beads 18. Rediscovering wholeness. There came a day, quiet, unremarkable, when Teshi realized he no longer missed May with pain. He still cared for her. He still honored what they shared. But he no longer needed anything from her to feel whole. He was no longer waiting to be chosen. Because he had already chosen himself. Fire 19. The sacred fire of transformation. Like golden fire, Teshi had been refined by his experience. The silence that once felt like punishment had become a furnace of growth. The unanswered calls, once wounds, had become wisdom. What once broke him open now made space for truth. Zen does not promise that life will never hurt. It promises that we can awaken through the pain. Teshi was not who he once was. He had burned, yes, but only to emerge clearer, kinder, more alive.